Perfect. And then I'm going to share my screen. Hope you can all see my screen. Before we proceed, I want you to click the view options in the top middle, select side by side mode, and take the drag bar in the middle. When you take the drag bar in the middle, you can see half of my presentation on one side and half of me on the other side. Our topic for today's workshop is crafting your speech. I was having a chat with my mentor, Dennis Dawson, and I was asking him, how can I get better at impromptu speaking? The one thing he said, the key to become better at impromptu speaking is giving more speeches. That was absurd, I thought. But then he explained. He said, when you give more speeches, you can use the material from those prepared speeches during your impromptu speaking. And that made sense to me. How do you give more speeches? We need to know what is the formula for crafting our speeches. Once we know that formula, it becomes easier to write the speeches. I'm not an expert in crafting the speeches, but I've reviewed over 100 scripts over the last 1 year, and I've given more than 100 speeches. So it is the compilation of all the things what I've learned in this workshop. This is going to be an interactive workshop, so ask me questions any point of the time. The more questions you ask, the more information I can share with you. Here is the agenda for today's meeting. First, we'll go through why. Why do we need to craft the speech? Second, what is a good style of writing a speech? What are the good topics that we can select? Those resonate with the audience. How to organize our speech so that the audience can follow us. What is a good opening? What goes into the body of the speech? How to make an impact with your conclusion? What things to avoid? And as I said, this is going to be an interactive session, so ask me any questions at any point of time. My first question to you is, why it is necessary to craft your speech? Hong?
Why is it necessary to craft your speech?
Yep.
It's necessary so that you can plan and prepare and execute a good speech.
Very true. Any other?
I was thinking maybe to add to Hong's point, and also to have a conversation with the audience. And in this way, you get an opportunity to speak and communicate well.
Yes, very true. The three things are very important. 3 C's, I always tell 3 C's are very important. The goal of the speech is to be very clear. Because sometimes we have a speech, but it's not clear. It becomes very tough for the audience to connect. The second thing, it has to be coherent. Our ideas should flow and the audience should be with us. And the main goal, as Wong and Jem all suggested, our goal is to connect with the audience. The speech is not about us. The speech is about the audience. If we cannot take our audience with us throughout our speech, then the speech has failed. So the goal is to keep the audience with us all the time. I'm going to share a lot of things, but I want you to have 3 main takeaways. The first one, As I said, it's a conversational style. We need to have our speeches in conversational style. And I'll go into more details about that. The second thing, we need to have a brisk start. When we have a brisk start, we capture the audience's attention. And the third thing, a speech has to be a story, or it has to arouse the audience's curiosity so that we can keep the audience interested in the middle of the speech. So I want you to remember these three things: conversational style, brisk start, a story, or arouse curiosity in the speech. Any questions? As I told you before, conversational style is the most important thing. But when I used to write speeches, everyone used to say, oh, you're writing like an essay. And they would tell me, oh, you need to be more conversational. And I had no clue what means, how to sound conversational. So finally, after doing a lot of research, I came across a blog by Lisa Marshall. And she shares the secrets about how to sound conversational. Here are her secrets about how to sound conversational. So number one thing, we use conversational style to connect with the audience. When we use smaller sentences, those are easier for the audience to follow us. Initially, when I was writing my speeches, I used to have very long sentences, and the audience will just forget what I started with. So remember to have very short sentences. Second thing, the easiest way to make your speech more conversational is to use contractions like isn't for is not, aren't for are not. The third thing, we need to use easy to pronounce words. I was giving a speech. My speech title was Smell of Life. And I had this word, cardiologist, and I still have difficult time in pronouncing that. People could not understand what I was trying to say. So finally, I had to change it to heart doctor rather than a cardiologist. So we have to use words so that the audience can stay with us. The fourth thing, rhetorical question. I have a slide on rhetorical question, but one thing I'll tell you, you can open your speech with rhetorical question. You can close your speech with a rhetorical question. And finally, the most important thing is we have to share our inner dialogue with the audience. What is happening in our head? What are the analytical reactions happening? What are our emotions? What is our vulnerability? If we share our emotions and vulnerability, that connects with the audience. Out of these 5 points, which point stands out for you? Anything is new which stands out for you? Matt?
I think the last one's interesting because
Yeah.
you're talking about an analytical process.
Yes.
And I don't think of that as used in a conversational style. So I think that's interesting that you have to share your inner reasoning.
Yes, yes. That when I learned about that, it's like, oh, wow. And when I've seen people writing speeches in that way, I was able to more connect with them. It was a big change for me. Anyone else, anything that stands out for them?
Is that using metaphors and analogies?
Which one? The
I'm sorry, for the analytical. Can you deconstruct the difference between rhetorical and analytical, please?
Oh, yes, sure. So rhetorical questions, I'll go into detail. I have a slide, but I'll tell you about the analytical process. What is analytical process is what is happening in my head? What is my inner dialogue? What is my mind saying? Because we always have inner reactions going on. Right now, there are inner reactions going on in my head. So sharing that process, really connects with the audience. Like saying, oh, I was afraid of giving that speech that day. When I share that, the audience connects with my emotions. So here is a slide on contractions. I'm going to give you this presentation so you don't have to take notes. But these are the contractions. If we use contractions in our speech, it sounds conversational. So don't use do not, use don't, or let's instead of let us, isn't instead of is not. So here is a slide about rhetorical question. I want to tell you some main things about rhetorical question. First of all, rhetorical question is used to grab the audience's attention. It is used to make a point. It is a figure of speech, and the intention is not to get the answer from the audience. If I ask you, what is your name? That is not a rhetorical question. But if I ask you, what to do if your child begins to choke? That is a rhetorical question, because I'm trying to make a point that moment. Any questions about rhetorical question?
So is the idea on the rhetorical question to tailor that to the audience? Because there's all sorts of rhetorical questions that like some have emotional content, some do not.
Yeah.
So how do you, I guess my question is, how do you decide what is the right rhetorical question for your speech?
It has to resonate with your theme of your speech, what message you are trying to convey. Suppose if I'm talking about child choking, then that becomes a very good rhetorical question which connects to my speech. So it depends upon your main message should be followed when you use a rhetorical question. It should point towards what your main message is.
The question should answer itself, right? That is a rhetorical question.
Or you can make a point. You know, sometimes, like suppose if I'm asking, do you know what to do if your child begins to choke? Because I don't, that time I'm not asking you to know the answer, but I'm trying to make a point that, oh, things can happen like that. Okay.
Also, sorry, rhetorical question, you don't have to answer it. It is to make you think. It is to make you wonder. It's just to get you started, but you don't need to answer.
That's very true. That's very true. Yep.
So there are, I've heard that instead of asking a rhetorical question like, let's see, how many, do you know what to do when your child is choking?
Yeah.
That is a thinking, but then there's another style of asking that question which goes, raise your hand if you've ever encountered a child that is choking. Those get distinguish between those two and which one you prefer.
So the second one is like you're asking a question, you're trying and you're asking a question. So that's not a rhetorical question. That is more like of a audience participation. You're trying to get, suppose you're starting a speech and you're trying to get the audience participate in what you're saying. But the first one, do you know what to do when your child begins to choke? I'm not expecting an answer for you. I'm just making a point that, oh, child choking is some of the big causes of death. You know, if I'm trying to make a speech about that. So I'm trying to make a point in that moment.
Or it could be like something, have you ever wondered how we can save planet Earth?
Yes, that is a rhetorical question.
There's no answer to it, but it's just to make you wonder and suck you into how you want to go to the next point.
Yes, very true, very true.
So one question. So and I don't know if it would matter,
Yeah.
but of course, there's a couple ways of asking the question.
Mhm.
You know what to do if your child is joking? What would you do if your child was joking? And there's other variations as well. I guess my original question is, how do you know how to phrase it? Is there an optimal phrasing depending on what point you're trying to make?
I have not seen any specific optimal phrasing. If you can make a point with your any question, that will become your optimum phrasing. Does that make sense, Matt?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. Topic selection. What are the good topics that connect with the audience? I'll go into details about that. The first and foremost, the easiest topic to choose from is something which you have gone through, which is a personal topic. If you choose a personal topic, the audience connects with you. The reason the audience connects with you is because you have lived through those emotions. And when you have lived through those emotions, you share those when you're giving that speech. And that connects with the audience. You are very authentic when you share something personal because your emotions show up. So remember, the personal experience is the best way, best topic to connect with the audience. So what are the different personal experiences? Here are a few of them. The first one, interest. What are your interests? I gave a speech about triathlons. I was passionate about triathlons. So that is one of my interests. Career. I gave a speech when I was laid off. What happened? How did my career came back up? Easiest to talk about is your family. We have brothers, sisters, mom, dad, girlfriend, wife. We can talk about them. And finally, education. My first speech, which I gave, was about a time when I was doing my master's. So these are the 4 personal topics you can choose from. I'm going to share with you the 3 F's. These stories, the audience has instant rapport with. The 3 F's. I've already shared the first F. This stands for family. Any family stories connects with the audience because everyone has families. I'll tell you, I made a mistake when I was talking about an Ironman triathlon. I was talking about a topic which was interesting to me, but not many people have gone through that experience. So always choose a topic where it's general and all the audience can connect to. The second F is failure. We all have failures in life. I talked about a time when I was in a speech contest at the area level and I came in second. What was going on? What were the emotions coming through? So failure is something everyone has gone through and it connects with the audience. And finally, fear. Everyone has fears. I'm going to give a speech about fear. I have fear of heights. And last October, I went and was climbing the Half Dome. I was frozen like a deer. But my 3 friends, their support helped me to climb the Half Dome. So I'm going to talk about fear and support in that speech. So remember these 3 F's, family, failure, and fear. You will have instant rapport with the audience. The second type of speech is a research speech. Again, here, if you're doing a research, talk about something you are passionate about. Because if you talk something you are passionate about, the audience enjoys it. The audience connects with it. I'll give you an example. When I was giving a research speech, I talked about paper cups. And in my company, people would just use double paper compostable cups to drink water and just throw them into recycle bin or trash or compostable. And seeing so many cups in all the 3 bins, it made me wonder why, which is the right way to dispose of. And are those cups environmentally friendly? So I was passionate about that. And when you are passionate about it, the audience connects with you. So here are the various reference material you can use to do your research. The number one is Mr. G. Google is the best resource. You can find so much of material on Google. Like my last 2 speeches, I talked about understanding my communication style, or I was talking about emotional intelligence. For understanding your communication style, I saw a really beautiful blog written by Aubrey Blanche, and she was sharing tips about navigating communication styles which are different from yours. So Mr. G or Google helped me for my speech. The second one, books. I was writing a speech about emotional intelligence, and the first book which came to my mind was Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goldman. The first thing that stood out from that book was the impulse control. So I talked about that in my research speech. The third one, you can use magazines like National Geographic to find stories which interest you. Or even you can use Toastmasters magazine as a reference material. And finally, newspapers. You can use newspapers like New York Times or Wall Street Journal if you find some good articles that resonate with you. Any questions so far?
I have a question,
Yes.
Abhijit.
Jamal, go ahead.
So when it comes to research, sometimes you need to know, is the source truthful? Like, when you search, you can get all kinds of information. So how do you differentiate which is the right source, and what source do you use when you give your speech? Like, do you get into such a situation?
Yes, like suppose I was doing some research on hybrid cars versus gasoline cars. So when I'm doing a research like that, and I will only use something which is published by the university, because I will always go with sources which are more credible. So, and you have to check, you have to connect, means the sources should connect with you. So I will try to always use something which is by the university. That makes it easy for me.
Okay.
Okay. The next thing we are going to talk about is various styles of preparation. What are the various styles of preparation? If you ask me to go and write a speech in next 24 hours, I cannot do it. But I want to share some things which will make you easy to write a speech in next 24 hours if you want to write it. Here are the 3 things which I've learned over the time. The first thing, whenever I get a speech idea or anything, I create a Word document. As I told you, I want to write a speech about fear. I've made a Word document. I have a folder called as Amazing Scripts. I wrote fear, and I typed few lines which I felt were very important for me to convey in my speech. So my main ideas are already there. So now if you ask me to go and write that speech, I can write it within the next 2 hours. I can scribble it and write it. The second thing, this is very important, which I just recently learned, is voice recording. I have a speech which I want to give for the humorous speech contest in September. I was just sitting one day and this idea started coming through. I didn't want it to type anything. So I just took my phone. I recorded myself for 4.5 minutes. And now when I want to write this speech, I'll just transfer this to my Word document. There is always, you have so many different softwares which you can use for convert your recording into a Word document. And then I will just complete that speech. So this is another way of writing your speech. The main advantage of voice recording is your speech will always be very conversational. The third thing, like sometimes I get up in the morning and I have a lot of ideas going on. those ideas are not there by afternoon. So when these ideas are coming through, I'm still in bed, I take my phone and just note down the main things what are happening. And these things help me when I'm writing my speeches because the ideas are there, they're compiled. And you can use your phone anywhere. So these are the three things which really help me. Like before writing any speech, I have main ideas written. And getting main ideas is sometimes a creative process. It doesn't happen if you force it to happen. So these are the three ways which I use for my speech preparation. Anything stands out for you from this?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When it comes to selecting a topic, do you select the title first? Because I've noticed that today I may select one title and I may have some idea, and then tomorrow I may get bored with it and I have idea for something else. So I was just wondering, how do you make sure what do you do in situations when your idea keeps changing and you're having hard time figuring out how to get to one topic and, do that?
So what I do, if it's a different idea, then I create a different Word document. So I only have one idea on my one page. I don't care about what title. My first thing is to write the speech. I'll give you an example. I wrote a speech. The title of the speech was Uncharted Waters. But when I went with that speech, people would not understand what I was trying to say. So I had to change my title, and I changed it to what is your defining moment. So titles can be changed anytime. Some titles are very precise, like the humorous speech I'm talking about. The title I got yesterday was The Time When I Tried to Fool My Parents. So that title, I really want to use it because it's a humorous speech. So, yeah, go ahead, Paula.
So, I wonder how much the purpose of your speech plays into this. Like, what are you trying to do? Where does that come in?
So my purpose of the speech is I always have a message. Like if I'm writing a script, there is some message which I want to share with the audience. Like when I'm writing that fear speech, my message is the support of the friends, which can take you to different heights. And mostly these speeches, when I'm writing these speeches, these speeches will be mostly international speeches. But now I will tell you, Paula, I was writing a level 5 speech. Okay. Level 5 speeches are very specific. It was about a time when I formed a team and hosted an event. So now, when I wanted to write this speech, I started thinking about it 4 or 5 weeks ago. Or it's like what things I want to share. And I had in my head that I only want to talk about 3 things. What things I learned from hosting that event and forming the team. And those 3 things I had noted down in my phone. And then Saturday morning, I just got up. I had those 3 ideas. I sat down for next 2 hours and wrote my first draft. And it was specifically for that level 5 speech. So it depends upon what kind of speeches are. My next speech is going to be my DTM project speech, which is the last speech for my DTM. So I know what I'm going to talk about, but I need to put down my ideas. I don't like to just start blankly. I want to have my ideas, and those ideas come when I'm not thinking about them, or it comes when my creative juices are flowing. Does that make sense, Paula? Yeah.
A question, the difference between the first and the thirds.
First and the third, yeah, it's not much difference, but the first one is I create Word documents. I have script with the names, like fear. I've already written that. And that time I had more time if you have a laptop around, but sometimes I can just use my phone. Sometimes phones become it's more shorter on the phone, but if it's on the first thing, it's more on the laptop, and the last thing is more on the mobile.
So are you
Not-
noting down just random ideas that you could incorporate into future speeches, or these ideas about your next speech?
Random ideas. Mostly on the phone, I have random ideas. And when I get finalized, I have the scripts ready, right? Fear, I know what I'm going to write. So I have more of a substantial story there. But now when I'm noting down ideas, especially like suppose if I'm writing for DTM, it's like, okay, what should I write? So I don't know right now. But then I'll just scribble something, and once it gets formulated, then I will transfer it to my laptop.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned what are some of the other style of preparation.
Hmm.
You can also like draw. It can be stick figures. You can take photographs. You can grab an image of something. And I listen to podcasts, and I usually get inspired very much by certain things that they're saying that resonates to my ideas. So I write them down as well, and I categorize it under that topic that I want to write about, because what they said seems to support what I want to indicate.
Perfect. Yeah, these ideas are very important. Whenever we get those, we need to note it down.
Otherwise, they grow a wing and they fly away.
Yes, yes. And it feels like, oh my God, I'm trying to remember what was that. That is the worst feeling I get.
Yep.
Organizing your speech. What is a good way to organize your speech? The one thing which we know is we develop an outline. The three things that are important for a speech. Number one is opening. The opening mostly is used to grab the audience's attention. The second is body. What goes into a body of the speech? Our main ideas. Mostly they say we should have three main ideas. And then we need to have a supporting material for those main ideas. And the most important thing here is transitions. Because sometimes if we don't transition well, then the audience gets disconnected or we can lose them. So transitions are very, very important. And finally, conclusion. I'm going to go into depth of each one of them in the next few slides. Before I go, I want to tell you this Toastmaster technique. It's the organizational method which everyone knows. You tell them what you're going to talk about. When you tell the audience, it really prepares them what is coming next. The next thing, you tell them in the body of the speech, you tell them what you're talking about. And finally, you repeat what you told them. The repetition really helps to hone in your point. The audience can grasp the point or the message because of your repetition. I try to follow this because then the audience knows what my message is going to be. I'll give you an idea for this. I'm giving a speech on level 5. And level 5 speeches can get boring because it can get very abstract. How do you get stories into a project? So what I did is I'm going to talk about 3 things in my speech. And I came up with the acronym ART, ART. And I keep on repeating what I'm talking about. A stands for advertising. R stands for room for creating, room for creativity. And T stands for teamwork. So I start with A, then I repeat at the end of it. So far we learned about A. And then next I say, we'll talk about R, room for creativity. And then I repeat these many times. So at the end of it, the audience exactly knows what my message was. Any questions regarding that so far?
And what did T stand for?
Oh, T stands for teamwork.
Teamwork. So
Yes.
that was an example of what you were telling us, right?
Yes, yes. So it's a speech. I have stories about I learned how to advertise or promote the events. And then I realized that for me to thrive, I need creativity. I need room to express my creativity. And the third thing was teamwork, like how teamwork helped us to execute this project. So this is my 3 things are the message, what I learned in that, doing that project or being the host of a TLI event.
So I have a question. So say suppose you don't have that abbreviation.
Yes.
What's another way to tell them 3 times? Do you repeat the sentence 3 times? I was just wondering what's another way if you don't have an abbreviation?
If you don't have an abbreviation, you can just repeat it. You know, the best thing is repeating your message time to time. Like I'll give you an example. I was talking about a story. My message was, life is not a sprint. Life is a marathon. So I use that sentence in my opening. I use that sentence in my body, and I use that sentence in my conclusion. So repeating that really helps to understand. Okay. Opening of the speech. I feel opening of the speech is important because the audience is paying attention to you. All the audience is glued on to you. So remember, first 2-3 sentences, don't say, fellow Toastmasters or guest, or can you hear me? Don't, no. When you are given a chance to speak, pause 1 second, 2 seconds, and immediately go on with your speech. When you pause and directly start your speech, the audience, you can grab the audience's attention. And we'll talk about opening, how to grab that attention. So first thing I want to talk about is, what are the criteria for successful opening? The first thing, attention grabbing. We need to capture their attention immediately. If we don't capture it, it becomes really hard for us to later on capture that attention. The second thing, introduce the topic. I've seen many times, sometimes the speakers don't tell you what they are talking about until the body of the speech. That's too late. I myself go into la la land if I don't know what they are talking about. So tell the audience, what are you going to talk about? The third thing, the most important thing about opening is to relate with the audience, is to establish the rapport with the audience. So talk about a topic which you and the audience can relate to. And finally, the opening should only be 5 to 10% of your speech. Opening and closing is very similar, only 5 to 10% of your speech. So here are criteria for success, different openings. I'm going to go through one by one. I'm going to give you an example of each one of them. The first one, quote. As I told you, I'm doing the level 5 speech and I am starting with a quote. Initially, what I was doing is I was starting my speeches with a question, but my mentor suggested, no, it's enough. You need to use different techniques. And I will give you an example. I did a mentoring speech recently. I started with a quote. The quote was, Winston Churchill said, we make a living with what we get. We make a life with what we give. And my mentors taught me how to give. So that's the way I started my speech about mentoring. And my message was inspired. My speech title was Inspired to Give. The second, audience participation. When I was talking about those compostable cups, the first thing I asked people, how many cups do we use at NVIDIA in 1 year in Santa Clara campus? And when I told them that we use 4 million cups a year, I was able to grab their attention immediately. The third thing, arouse suspense or curiosity. I wrote a speech, but I never started my speech in the middle of the action. My evaluator suggested that you start your speech from the middle of the action. And here it was. It was March 7th, 2010. I was pedaling through New Zealand as part of my first Ironman triathlon. And then, bam, a disaster happened. This was my defining moment. What is your defining moment? So I aroused curiosity and suspense about the disaster. Fourth, tell a story or anecdote. I did a speech on communication style and I wanted to do it differently than I had done it before. So I wanted to use something different. I started with a phone call story. Hey, Raj, let's go to the bank. I need $5,000 urgently. When is the good time for you? I started with this anecdote and I was able to grab the audience's attention. The easiest way to start a speech is saying something that is why this topic is important for you. When you share that, it connects with the audience. When you share something is important to you, it connects with the audience. Again, rhetorical question. You can use it in the opening, you can use it in the closing. It is used to make a point and grab the audience's attention. Here are some of the things which you should avoid in the opening. First thing, never tell the audience how much time it took to prepare for this speech, because that is not what the audience wants to hear. You will lose your audience if you tell that in your speech. The second thing, avoid being dull and boring. First 2-3 sentences, very, very important. Don't say that my name is Abhijit Joshi. I am here to talk about this topic. You have lost your audience. And finally, always mention your topic in the opening. I have seen myself, I get lost if the person does not tells me what he's going to talk about. Anything stands out regarding opening?
I have a question about topic.
Yes.
So I'll avoid delaying mention of the topic.
Mhm.
I'm somehow tying topic with title. Is that what it is?
No. Topic is mostly, as I told you, what is your defining moment? I'm going to talk about my defining moment. I told that in the introduction itself that I'm going to talk about defining moment. Okay.
But what
Like-
was your title?
My title was also what is your defining moment? But I was
see.
going to talk about my defining moment.
Oh, I see.
Or as I told you, in the mentoring speech, I said my mentors taught me how to give. And my story was about how the mentor taught me how to give. Right? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
You know that you have different kind of audience. Perhaps you have an audience with more energy that
Yep.
want to participate,
Mhm.
and other audience more quiet.
Yes.
If you realize that, you can realize that in 1 minute. How will be your audience? You have some special bullets in the first part to say, okay, I want you be here.
So see, if you are the audience is excited and you know, see, okay, I'll go back a little bit because there is a different way. If I'm a speaker, if I'm a very dynamic speaker, like I'll give you an example. I took an entourage of speakers, me and 2 more speakers, to Columbia University in New York on Saturday. And we 3 speakers were there. So my friend Ravi is a very dynamic speaker. And I feel when he is that dynamic, he doesn't need audience to participate because he's already giving out the energy at a high level. Then I have another speaker, my fellow friend, Renee. She's not as dynamic as Ravi is. She needs the audience interaction. Okay, so I feel her speeches get more effective if she has audience reaction. So it does not depend upon the audience. It depends upon you. Are you dynamic, or do you need the audience interaction? So depending upon that, plan your speeches. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I just want to add
Yes.
the power of pause.
Yes.
Very, very powerful. My family, I'm exaggerating, they all suffer from ADD. And whenever I want to give a speech, give a talk, I wait. I mean, I say, hey, I want to say something. And once I grab the attention of a couple of people, and when I see the others are not paying attention, I pause and I look at them. And by looking at them, what happens is that the person next to them goes, psh, psh, psh. Milka's talking, pay attention. So it's very powerful to pause and wait till everyone's ready, because then you get their undivided attention. Thank you.
Yes, pausing is an art of, because you can grab the audience attention, you can get their ears perked up, ready to listen. So pausing is very important. Body. What should be going into the body
Hey, I
of
got a
the
question.
speech? Yes.
Excuse me.
Yep.
How pregnant should your pause be?
Oh, 1 or 2, 3 seconds. Okay, I'll tell you. I'll give you an example. Press Vasilov. He paused in his speech, international speech, for 7 seconds. 7 seconds is very long, but normally 2 or 3 seconds is good enough. Whenever I'm starting a speech, I will pause 2, 3 seconds, and I will be reciting my first line of the speech. I will never start as soon as they announce my name.
If I may add to that pause, you might want to read your audience, and that's how you know how long you want to pause. You look at them and you read them. And when they're ready, then you know it's time for you to begin.
Yeah. Body of the speech. What goes into the body of the speech? Here are some things I want to share with you. So what is important in the body? The first thing I want to tell you is, if we have a story, we need to have an obstacle in the story. If it is just a chronological order, there is no obstacle, then there is no tension in the story. If there is no tension, the audience is gone. They are in their la la land. So remember, your story needs to have an obstacle which creates tension. If you are giving a research speech, it should arouse the curiosity of the audience. I'll give you an example. A fellow Toastmaster, she started up talking about silk. Immediately, her passion was so attractive for me that I was like listening, and it also aroused my curiosity. What is silk? What kind of fabric it is? So remember, curiosity is very, very important. Last week, I was a Toastmaster for a division contest in District 57. And the guy was talking about space and dark energy. Dark energy. Immediately, my curiosity was spiked. So remember, if you are talking about a research speech, arouse the curiosity of the audience. If you are doing a story, make sure there is an obstacle which creates the tension. Without tension, the audience will be lost.
Can you please give us some concrete examples, please?
Sure. Yep. When I was talking about my story, right? The disaster happened. So what kind of a disaster happened? When I was talking about my story, my bicycle tire exploded. And I was in the middle of New Zealand and with no tire. That is the obstacle I created. And the tension is rising within me and the audience because I have a big race going on. It's a full Ironman and I'm in nowhere. What is going to happen next? So here I create the tension because of the obstacle. And curiosity, I'll give you an example. When I was giving the paper cup speech, I asked the audience, do you think it is environmentally friendly or not? When I asked that question, they didn't know the answer. But I explained them that in my speech that no, it's not environmentally friendly. So I aroused their curiosity with that. And in that speech, I also told them that your glass cup is more environmentally friendly than your compostable cups. And I had numbers and everything for that. So in that way, I aroused their curiosity. So body, as I told you, body mostly has 3 main points or 3 main ideas. Once we know what are the 3 main ideas, we need to have the supporting material for those ideas. And then what we do is we arrange them properly so that we can have proper transitions. So remember the 3 things. The first thing is your main ideas, main points. And then you can either arrange them or first elaborate them, expand them, and then arrange them in order. So this creates the body of the speech. Now I will give you an example. My fellow Toastmaster, he wrote a speech about communication style. And he talked about 3 things in his speech. One was empathy. And another one was making a request rather than a demand. So he had 3 main points and with 3 main anecdotes attached to it. So that really made his body very clear and easy to understand. Again, I'm doing this level 5 speech and my 3 main ideas are ART. I'm going to talk about a small story about advertising or promoting the event. I'm going to talk about room for creativity. And the third idea is teamwork. So these are my 3 main points in my speech. This is a sample of one of the speeches, it's one of the style of speeches. You can have many, many types of structures, but this is just one sample. Opening, you can start with in the middle of the action. Like when I started my speech about what is your defining moment, I started when the disaster happened. I introduced the topic, what is your defining moment? And then in the body, I developed the story. Overcome the obstacle of exploding tire. And my lessons learned, and then call to action. So this is an easiest structure or a sample structure you can follow. Any questions on this thing?
What does exactly call to action mean?
Call to action. Okay, I will tell you call to action. And I will give you an example. I'll come back to this in my conclusion because I have call to action. Okay, I'll come back to it. Because it's an effective way of closing. So 3 things I want to tell them. Good speeches are rewritten. You cannot write a perfect script in your first go. So forget about that. I have so many people, they say, oh, they cannot think of anything perfectly, so they don't write at all. Just get rid of that. The good speeches are always rewritten. The most important thing I've learned is to stick my butt to the chair and not get up until my draft is ready. This is what my mentor told me. If you ever want to write a script, stick your butt to the chair and don't get up until your script is done. and I truly embody that. And that's the way to write it. And you can never write a perfect script. Like I'll tell you, when I was writing the what is your defining moment, I went through 15 times. I had 15 rewrites of that script. But it only happened because I had my first draft ready. So remember, the most important thing is first have a first draft ready. I want you to tell you about the speed. I have learned for myself that my speed is 100 words per minute. For some people, it can be slower or faster. So depending upon your speed, you should know what word count to use. I try to use only 650 to 700 words. Mostly 600 to 650 because I have lots of pauses in my speech. I'll give you an example. Pres Vasilov, who was the 2013 world champion, had only 479 words in his speech for 5 to 7 minutes. He had a Bulgarian accent. So he knew he had to go slower than normal people, normal American accent people. 2014, Ryan Avery is he had 732 words in his 5 to 7 minute speech. He was from Colorado. He did not have an accent. He had a higher word count. So it depends upon you what word count you want to use. I'll give you an example. I wrote a speech, Reflection on My Path. It's a very long speech. I had 1250 words in there, but then I wanted to give a speech for only 10 minutes. So I was editing it, and finally I got it to 950 words so that I can finish it in 10 minutes. So always understand what is your word count, and always try to be on the lower side because you always have to manage time. Because if you are if you are giving a speech with the live audience, you want to be very careful with time, because if you start getting laughs and if you have a longer speech, I'll talk about that in my conclusion. You need to have a plan B. Any questions regarding? Yes, please. Welcome.
Question. Would you say people who are in a leadership position, while situational, do you think a leader gains more credibility when they speak slowly, or you think they gain more credibility when they are able to be very articulate and speak very fast?
It depends upon their style, but one thing is pauses are the most important thing, because you can make the point with the pauses. Fast speaking, sometimes, if you are in a diverse audience, and if you speak fast, you might lose some people. So be careful about that. I'll give you an example. I was giving a speech at my club, and my fellow friend said, "You need to speak fast." Cedric was right. Okay, I decided I'm going to speak fast. I went to Texas to give a speech, and I tried to speak fast, and I lost my audience because they could not understand what I was trying to speak. So have a pace which you are comfortable with. It's all about you, your comfort level, and making sure the audience can understand it. Any other questions? Conclusion. Conclusion is one of the most important things, because you have gone through your introduction, body, and here is a place you make an impact. And there are various ways of making a conclusion. I've already shared 3 ways. The first thing is using a rhetorical question. You can end your speech with that. The second thing, you can use a quote to end your speech. The third thing, you can use a short story or anecdote to end your speech. But here I want to share some more information on conclusion. So here are the criteria for successful conclusion. The first thing is, the goal is to have some sense of closure to your speech. And here, what happens is we make an impact. This is very important, making an impact in conclusion. If you have a good conclusion, that makes your speech more powerful than the other person who has a stronger introduction and body. As I told you, your conclusion opening should only be 5 to 10% of your speech. Here are various ways of doing conclusion. Easiest way is to summarize the main points. The repetition really helps for the audience to understand or have those points in their memory. They get a good grasp of what you said. The second thing is call to action. What is call to action? You're encouraging the audience to try it. Like I will give you an example. I was giving a speech about saying yes. I asked the audience, I challenged the audience to say one yes today. And that one yes might change your life. I'm encouraging the audience to say one yes. That is called as call to action. Or in another story, I was talking about communication skills. And the one thing which I learned is I need to take into account what is my communication style and your communication style before communicating with you. I asked the audience, do you look at the communication style of yours as well as the audience you're trying to communicate with? If not, please do, because it might help you to have a long-lasting relationship. So that is a call to action. Hong, does that understand? Do you understand that?
Yeah,
Call
that
for
makes a lot of
action.
sense.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Another technique is called as bookending technique. Means you're referring to the first line of the speech and the end. Means in the end also you have the same line. I'll give you an example. I started a speech with let's go to the bank. And then I again referenced it in my conclusion that I have realized that I cannot just call you and say, let's go to the bank. So that is called as referencing. You're like book ending, you're ending, making a complete circle. Tips for success. The first thing, always memorize your conclusion. Another thing, end on time. Here, you need to have a plan B. If you feel that your conclusion is long and you are running out of time, have a plan B of a smaller conclusion. Ending on time is very important. And the reason we memorize the conclusion is because we want to make an impact. The one thing I'll tell you, never add any new points in your conclusion because the audience cannot connect with it. Since you have not mentioned that in your body, refrain from adding any new points in your conclusion. Here are some of the pitfalls to avoid. Before I go, any questions regarding conclusion? Here are some of the pitfalls to avoid. Remember, if you have a boring start, if you say, my name is Abhijit Joshi, or fellow Toastmaster said guest, in your first 2-3 lines, you might lose your audience. The second thing, avoid chronological. Like I see so many speeches, they start, I did this in 1992. I did this in 1996. I did this in 2020. No, no, no. Don't have a chronological order. Try to just go into one piece of the story, go into detail about that. That makes an impact for the audience. Whenever you give a speech, why are you giving the speech? You need to have that clear message inside your head. Why are you giving that speech? If the message is unclear, the audience is lost because we need to know why you are giving the speech. And the final thing, we need to have the tension or the curiosity in the speech. If we don't have that, the audience will not stay glued to you. Finally, here are my 3 main takeaways. We always need a conversational style to connect with the audience. a brisk start to capture the audience's attention. Tension, or arousing their curiosity to keep them interested. The great is the art of beginning, but the greater is the art of ending. Thank you so much. Any questions?
When you say conversational style versus what? What are other styles that we should have been using?
Oh, see, I think there is only one style, conversational. The other style is like, suppose if I'm writing, I'm used to writing essays, but essays are, they're very long sentences and they don't have that connection. It's like when I'm giving a speech, it should feel like I'm talking to you, not I'm telling you an essay. If I'm telling you an essay, you will not connect with it because it's, yeah.
How do you
Yes.
memorize?
Oh yeah, I'll give you a very good example. So one thing, sleep and memorizing goes together, okay? Like I have written the speech, it's 650 lines. Now what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to do only 100 words tomorrow. And I'm going to repeat that 10 times. The next day, Wednesday, I'm going to add another 100 words and I'm going to repeat them 10 times. And then Thursday, I'm going to do another 100 words and repeat them 10 times. So I'm doing only small things, but by the weekend, I will have that whole speech memorized. And then I'll be ready for giving that speech on 14th of April.
So if you have 500 words, that's 5-minute speech. That means you should have that ready at least 5 days before your speech.
Yes, I will have it 8 days before because I want to complete my 5 things and then just repeat it. I repeat 30 times again.
Yeah. And
Because
do you repeat, like on day 3, do you repeat the first 300 or you repeat
yes.
the third
Yep.
300?
No, miss, so day 3, I'll repeat the first day's 100, the second day's 100, and the third 100. So total 300.
So
okay,
that means the first 100 words will be getting repeated 5 times at least.
yes.
And the last 100 word gets repeated one or 2 times.
So that's why what I do is I keep 3 days where I only practice my full speech. So last 3 days, I will only do complete speeches with timing. Yep. I'll take my phone, I'll have my timing. So yeah.
Thank you.
So I need 8 days at least to prepare a speech. Yep, Paula.
So Abhi, you've given us a workshop and it doesn't appear that it was memorized.
Yeah.
So how do you compare a speech to what you just gave us?
Okay. Paula, I'm not that level yet, okay? But I want to give a speech like this speech. I don't have to memorize it. I know I'm going to talk about. But that's the level I'm going to get to if I give like 1,000 speeches. So I'm at least at 100 something. So I still have long ways to go. I want to follow Lance Miller, who has given 4,000 speeches. Yeah. So that is the level I want to aspire.
Yeah, Brigitte.
Yes.
As far as time management, I've seen people give a speech, they're running out of time, and then they give a very short conclusion.
Yeah.
Is it better to maybe drop one of your points or shorten that, but give your full conclusion? Because that's what people are going to remember, isn't it?
Yes, very true. Because conclusion is the place where you make an impact. I didn't know that. I used to have very long stories and I have only 2-3 lines of conclusion. No. You want to have a longer conclusion, at least 5 to 10% of your speech. Yeah. And most important thing, Matt, you said is ending on time is so important.
Right.
Yeah. So cut down your, I will when I prepared for those 12-minute speech, I just cut down on my body. It was like, okay, I don't want to talk about these many points because I want to make it concise and have a very strong conclusion.
When you say brisk start,
Yes.
is that the rhetorical questions that you were mentioning about? Or
No, brisk start is something like anything. Like I can start with a quote, like I said, Winston Churchill said, that's a brisk start because I'm quoting someone and I'm saying a good proverb, good quote. So it immediately grabs the audience's attention. I'm not starting with, my name is Abhijit Joshi. Today I'm going to talk about mentoring, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that. I'm immediately jumping onto my speech, taking the audience with me to the story. Yes, Mark.
But isn't that when you say you're going to introduce your topic? You're going to say, I'm going to talk about this, right?
Yeah, but see, I'm going to say that, but I'm not going to tell directly, Miss, I'm not going to use that words I'm going to talk about. Okay.
I think this question is a little bit off topic,
Yes.
but I was a guest at a contest recently, and I noticed that all of the speakers stood up.
Yes.
Is that something we should be doing? Because I noticed, given that we're at home on Zoom, it's more comfortable to be at the desk, right?
So, Hong, I'll tell you one thing. When you are speaking, when anyone is speaking, we have to come at a higher energy level. Okay. If you come at a very low energy level, the audience is already lost. They're already sleeping in Zoom. Okay. So if you sit down and give a speech, oh my God, it's very rare that you're going to grab, you will not be able to emit the energy. Very few people can do it. I have one of my friends, Renee, can do it, but whoever good speakers are, they have to stand. They will deliver while standing because you will come at a higher energy level and then you will get the audience.
Makes sense.
Till now, I was forced to give one speech sitting down. I've never given a speech sitting down, but that speech I was forced to give the speech sitting down. It was very tough.
Do you have any? I learned by examples, so this was very helpful. Thank you so much for beautifully deconstructing it and laying it out for us in such a beautiful, simple way. But from here on, are there any short stories that I could go look and see so I can see, read, and understand and learn?
Sure, I can share my scripts with you.
Awesome. You mean your stories?
Yeah. I can share my scripts with you.
You're very generous. Thank you so much.
Sure. And anytime, the one thing I'll say is I've reviewed so many scripts. Anytime, if you want to review anything, please send it over. I'll review it. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As far as stories go, one of the Mark Brown or somebody who does lots of seminars said, start a story file, a book, so that if something happens in your day, do what Abhi said, go write it down. You may not need it for the speech Tuesday, but in looking back, you'll go, oh yeah, remember that? Anyway, it's been hard for me to keep up a story file, but it's there. Story file.
Even Luisa Montalvo, she's a second place winner. She uses a phone to keep all her ideas. And Luisa Montalvo is a really good speaker. And by the way, she's giving a workshop on Wednesday, Humor 101. So I want you to come and listen to her. She's phenomenal. She's so authentic.
So where can we find more information about that?
I will send you, I'll put that details right now in the chat. Any other questions?
Are you on Clubhouse?
Clubhouse? No, not yet. I want to get on.
I can send you an invite. I think you'll enjoy it, and you probably will start a huge number of followers if you're interested in gaining that.
Sure, yeah, definitely. Let's do it.
But I need to have your phone number if you feel comfortable for me to.
Yes, I'll just put it here.
Great.
Any other? Yeah. If there are no further questions, I'm going to adjourn this and we can have a nice chat.